Good afternoon, everyone. And away from the Harrier builds, I've been working on the Kerguelen War 1968 build, which is also the Vietnam War naval build. I have built the Entendar number 4, Entendar 4, which is the helikit, and that's the one adversary I've built so far. I do need to build the Crusader and the Elise. Now, this helicopter here is a Fujimi CH-46 or KV-107 to be more precise. I've used a few kit parts. I've used some M60 door guns from a Hasegawa kit, the Hobby Boss winch, because these don't come with the winches, and I painted it in a rather smart 1960s scheme, because of course the Kerguelen Wars, the Whatif Kerguelen Wars, were in 1968. Now these are also served in Vietnam, and this helicopter has battle honours from both. The Fujimi kit is really nice. You can do it with the ramp at the top open and the lower ramp closed. You can do it with doors open. I've cut out some holes for those door guns. I've added the armour to the engine and the late exhaust, because this helicopter was upgraded in the late 1960s to have that, because it was used for combat search and rescue, and it did need to do a lot of combat search and rescue, particularly picking up downed French pilots. So the Kerguelen Wars in 1968 were when the Malagasy Whatif forces were heavily involved in the Vietnam War as well, and this did serve in both locations, this type of helicopter, mainly on board the bigger ships, the carriers, doing search and rescue. This was pretty much before a lot of the low-vis schemes came in, so you've got the aircraft of this period still with quite a lot of high-vis schemes. Now, of course, the Skyhawk, that is red where the slats come down, because you don't want to get anything stuck in there. And the helicopter force was going through a transition, so the CH-46 was used also on the LHAs, the bigger amphibious aircraft carrier type ships, and also they were using these S58 models, which then became the Wessex when they got the Wessex, and they were using these little UH-1Fs on the smaller ships like the frigates. The Kerguelen campaign kicked off when France tried to retake the Kerguelen Isles, or the Ile de Desolation Isles, from the Malagasys. Now, it is 2,000 miles south of Madagascar. The Madagascans moved on Prince Edward Isles, Crozet Isles, the Kerguelen Islands, which is this collection here, and the Amsterdam Isles, and took all of these in a lightning campaign in 1967. They then sent they had 3 carriers. They sent one of them to support the Americans up on the Gulf of Tonkin over here, and the French came to try and take it back in 1968, which was a bad year for the Malagasys, because they were also involved in the Tet campaign. The good news is that they were involved in Vietnam with the Americans, the Australians and the New Zealands. So the French, and of course of what was happening in the Middle East in the late 60s, the fact that the Malagasys could control entrance to the Gulf of Aden using their Vulcans and their javelins, the French had to sail down here. They came round here, and they were pincer moved by a Malagasy carrier coming here and one coming up from here, and they suffered heavy losses, including the loss of the Whatif Clemenceau, and the Foch was badly damaged. So yes, this helicopter was very busy picking up downed French aircrew. Now, the Crusaders were the main threat to the Malagasy Whatifians, but the Malagasy Whatifians, operating off their extended and enlarged Essex class carriers, they had the Gannet AW3, which gave them early warning as to what the French aircraft from their carriers were doing. They were able to combat the French submarines and keep them at bay via their long-range Neptunes, and also from their carriers, the Gannet in the anti-submarine role. They then used the helicopters from the destroyers and from the frigates, and again these could do basic anti-submarine work. But the Gannet anti-submarine did the majority of the damage to the French submarine fleet and kept them well at bay. The French, however, were confident in their abilities and were quite confident in the fact that they could take on the Malagasy Navy. What they hadn't understood was, of course, because the Malagasys were involved with the Americans in Vietnam, the Malagasy pilots had combat experience of modern air combat. They also had re-engined some of their underperforming types with British Rolls-Royce engines. So we had the Rolls-Royce engined Demon here, which rectified its main problem, which was its poor engine performance. And they were also carrying the latest American equipment. So AIM-7E Sparrow beyond visual range missiles and AIM-9D Sidewinders. The Malagasys also had a decent dogfighter to take on the Crusader in the Grumman Rolls-Royce re-engined Tiger, which had an Avon. Again, AIM-9D missiles, cannons as well. And what the French didn't anticipate was mixed fighter tactics from the Malagasy fleet air arm. So the Demons would act in a way as bait, going out, and then from low level coming up to combat the French Crusaders would be the F-11 Tigers. Now, it didn't all go the Malagasys' way, and they did have some pilots shot down, and the combat search and rescue helicopters were very active in finding them. But overall, the combination worked, and the AIM-9D was superior to anything the French had in their inventory at that time. The French carriers were damaged because the Malagasys used their Skyhawks, and they were still having trouble with the Buccaneers, and they were waiting for the CVA-01 carriers to be built by Britain to get the Buccaneer and the Phantom into service. But the Skyhawk did its damage with its bombs. These are 1,000-pound bombs. And most importantly, the Walleye guided bomb, which is what sank the Clemenceau. The destroyer screen as well for the French and the anti-aircraft frigates were blown out of the water or chased away by the Walleye guided bombs. So the Malagasys, by being involved in operational combat in Vietnam, gained access to some of the latest technology. The Marines, which had taken the Kerguelen Islands, were using the Wessex here and also the S-37 Mojave, and that was their primary means of taking the islands quickly in 1967. So I've been working through this collection. I've got a few more to build. I've got a Walleye Skyhawk to build. I've got another Rolls-Royce Demon to build. And what else have I got in the loft? That is about it. So the collection is almost complete except for the Crusader and the Brego Alize. Now I've been adding the decals to these aircraft. So we've got the decals there for the markings. So the Malagasy, way they do the markings is before they went to pictures for the squadrons. This is 45 Squadron Fleet Air Arm Malagasy Navy, and its aircraft number R. So you've got your squadron name on there. With some of these smaller helicopters, they were just in one big squadron up to 26, and they would be deployed on ships. So that's generally the way that it works. So we can see here that this is Malagasy Marines 3 Squadron Aircraft X. I hope that makes some sense. Take care. Goodbye.